Jamie, or there we go.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Margaret Hinkle. I chair the Post Commission. Welcome, members of the public, to our 37th public meeting. Let me call this meeting to order and ask for a roll call of our members of the commission. Commissioner Bluestone.
I'm here.
Commissioner Calderon.
I'm here. Good morning.
Commissioner Sherry.
I'm here. Good morning.
Commissioner Ellison. He's muted, but he's here. Commissioner Kasserosian. Commissioner Luma.
Good morning, present.
Commissioner West.
Good morning, present.
And Commissioner Wynn.
Good morning, present.
All members of the commission are here. We obviously have a quorum. Let me move on to the second item on the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the March 16th, 2023 meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? See nothing? Let me then, Commissioner Bluestone,
Approve.
Commissioner Calderon,
I approve.
Commissioner Sherry,
I approve.
Commissioner Ellison. He approves. We can indicate that. Commissioner Kasserosian,
I approve.
Commissioner Luma,
Approved.
Commissioner West,
Approved.
and Commissioner Wynn.
Approved.
Thank you. Moving on to the April 13th, 2023 minutes. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Bluestone,
I approve.
Commissioner Calderon,
I approve.
Commissioner Sherry,
I approve.
Commissioner Ellison. He approves. By hand signal, Commissioner Kasserosian. You approve, Marcia? Yes, thank you. Commissioner Luma?
Approved.
Thank you. Commissioner West
Approved.
and Commissioner Wynn.
Approved.
Thank you. And with that, we move on to the Executive Director report. Enrique, please.
Thank you, and good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I will share my screen in a couple of minutes, as is customary, with the presentation of a couple of items. I will just say, for housekeeping purposes, even though the Q&A function is enabled, we are not answering questions live this morning. You can submit them with that functionality, or as you can, anybody with questions can always contact our communications director, Cindy Campbell. Let me share my screen and I actually don't see, let's see. Okay. Can everybody see this? Can everybody see this?
Yeah.
Thank you. The executive director report slide, right? Okay, I don't see anybody in.
You're not in presentation mode. It looks like you're
Okay.
just in slide mode.
Oh. It's asking me to. It's not on presentation mode now.
We can see continue here. All done. You can close. There you go. Okay. Now go to presentation mode.
Yeah. Sorry. You can
There we
see it now. Yeah. Okay. Sorry for the difficulty. Okay, so let me get started with an administrative update. The Post-Commission website now includes a section called Decisions and Orders. In that section, we will begin to, and have started to list a number of decisions that the Commission is now going to be making. The first two are uploaded. Our website also continues to include the lists of certified, not certified, and suspended individuals. The most recent update was published on May 8th. The first two Commission decisions were also posted at that time. Going forward, these lists will be updated on the 20th of the month, as I have reported in the past, and published on the first day of the following month. As a reminder, we publish those updated lists when we have a reasonable confirmation that the individuals in question have received those notifications. So there may be somebody in transit, I guess, or about to get confirmation that doesn't make it into the list 1 month, but will make it into the list the following month. Also, by way of update, when it comes to administrative suspensions, commissioners will remember that I have reported in the past the progression of the compliance with in-service training. The first three sub-bullets in this slide talk about the history of this effort. There were approximately 300 officers non-compliant as of the end of last year. 46 I reported on March 15. 7 on the last meeting, I reported that there was compliance in progress. We ended up administratively suspending two officers. That happened on May 4th, where also there is one officer still with compliance in progress. So I think I'd like to just put this into context. There's approximately, of course, short of 20,000 individuals with this requirement. So we see this as negligible, and again, we'll continue to ensure that this requirement is met. The officers that are currently administratively suspended will be reinstated as soon as they complete this requirement. Included in your packets, commissioners, there's a memo from me regarding the disciplinary records effort. As of this morning, there are 35 agencies still pending submission. You will remember that, or by way of background, back at the end of January of this year, I sent a letter to all chiefs asking to resubmit sustained complaints that are reportable to post. This was done in an effort to validate the previously submitted disciplinary records that were submitted at the end of 21 and the beginning of 22. As I mentioned, 35 agencies are still pending this resubmission. Those are very small agencies. It is very likely that they have no records to resubmit, but we are reaching out individually to confirm that there is no resubmission. There has been some confusion because this is now our second effort in terms of collecting this information. So some agencies thought that they had already submitted them initially or complied with this requirement, which they did. We have to explain that we were asking for them to be resubmitted, which again is a process that is ongoing. 8 of those 35 agencies are actively working on that resubmission. Some, given the template that we provided this time around, it was a little, it included a lot of validation efforts, and that was admittedly a little harder for some agencies to submit records. But they are complying. We're very thankful that they're responsive. And again, the process is almost concluding when it comes to getting this information back from agencies. We currently have just short of 4,000 records of sustained complaints. About a third of them, or 1,124 to be precise, the last time we looked, requires some level of validation. I'll explain in a minute what an example of that is. We estimate that a majority of those errors, maybe half of those 1,000, could be validated in a very short order. And let me tell you what I mean by these type of validation efforts. If, let's say, a date of birth on an individual does not match with what we have on record, it could be that that record is not validated and therefore not migrated. We want to make sure that the person and the record are, in fact, an exact match. It could be that this time around, the people entering this information maybe transposed the number or made an entry error, and therefore we might have to go to another field to ensure the identity of the individual, for example, the MPTC ID number. If that matches, we're reasonably assured that that's the same individual. We can then put that record into the validation pile. Other instances of errors include, for example, when there's an empty field on a subcategory. This is a common error where they categorize a record or a discipline. We have a drop-down menu of the categories, but we also have a drop-down of a subcategory to ensure a better reporting. Individuals entries that did not include, for example, a subcategory are being kicked out as an error, and this could be something that we could validate in short order simply by leaving it blank, for example, or choosing what might be the most likely subcategory given the entry and the description. So we estimate again that some of these errors could be validated in a short period of time, perhaps the next 3 or 4 weeks. Our IT staff is and other staff are working hard on this effort. But I should say and mention here that there's the balance of that. In other words, the other 50% of those 1,000 or so records will likely require looking at them individually, because they don't fall in a category where there's many instances of those. And so I'm setting up the policy question that I have for you, commissioners, because we don't have at this time a good estimate of how long that might take. What I can tell you is that there's very little appetite by anybody to go back to agencies wholesale and ask them to resubmit something that has been submitted now for a second time. So I also want to mention additional data metrics. Commissioners, I reported to you last time, I think in January, that the prior submission of all those records initially submitted were around 12,000 records. That's for sustained complaints. We will be doing an analysis, but we believe that the difference is mostly due to complaints that were not reportable to post. A key feature of this resubmission was asking agencies to identify and essentially filter out those complaints that were not reportable to post. It's also fair to say that a minority of this difference may also be due to retirements that occurred since the first submission, but that would be a very small number of those records. As I mentioned, we will do an analysis of these data and potentially supplement this resubmission, but that's not something that we're doing in parallel or at the same time of this validation effort. We're doing that potentially right after. So as I pose the question in the in the memo, we have, I believe, a decision to make, and this is, I would love the commission to weigh in on this. Should post release a partial list of records, those that have been validated. This could include the next 3 or 4 weeks that I mentioned just a few minutes ago, validating what we believe would be half of the records that there are still in our not validated, or alternatively, should post continue this effort until we're comfortable that we have most records that are due from most agencies that have been validated, according to the efforts that I just described. Let me pause there, commissioners, because I would love for you to ask questions about this policy question, or of course, have a discussion. Can everybody? Did I lose everybody?
We're here.
Is everybody? I'm sorry, I cannot
We're here.
see.
We're all here.
Okay.
Looks good on our end.
Okay. I don't see. Let's see. I don't see the rest of. Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry for the technical difficulties. It's not what I'm used to. There's a couple of questions. Commissioner.
Maybe we can start with Commissioner Aluma, please.
Yes, thank you. So do you anticipate, if we were to release a partial list, do you anticipate just releasing the others on a rolling basis, or would you have a schedule as to when you would release the others as you validate them?
Yeah, we would probably keep to a bit of a schedule, maybe every 2 weeks or every month, as we get the batch of other records validated. But we have not made a decision on that front. We could also wait and see what kind of effort this validation turns out to be.
Commissioner Bluestone, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think obviously the concern is striking a balance between releasing records that the public is eager to view, and also ensuring the accuracy of the data. And the concern in releasing partial data like that, I think, would be that it could create misconceptions about the nature of the disciplinary actions across the state. So one suggestion I would make is to consider more of a middle ground, perhaps, and think of a percentile, maybe like the 95th percentile. Once you've achieved that level of validation, there's more likelihood that it would be an accurate sample.
Certainly, for sure.
Commissioner Ellison, please.
Yes, good morning, sir. I just have a couple of questions. You said something about 4,000 sustained complaints. Is that just like the technical issues with that number as far as reporting? Yes,
so the 4,000 or so figure is all the complaints that we asked to be resubmitted that we have currently in our possession, that we have received. That number may grow very slightly, only if there are some agencies, some of the small agencies that I mentioned that have not resubmitted, that if they have records to resubmit. I don't think there's going to be that many because these are very, very small agencies, and they have been confirming that there's no records to resubmit mostly. But of those 4,000, we have about 1,000, give or take, that require validation. So it's fair to say that 3,000 we could conceivably release or publish, notwithstanding the argument, the point that Commissioner Bluestone just made, that it could generate the impression that there's more discipline in one area versus another, and it just turns out to be that we have not validated the rest of records. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Ellison?
It does, and I just had a couple more quick ones, if you don't mind. So the other one is, how are we doing with the new round of certifications as far as getting through the process?
We'll get an update in a few minutes. That's the next part of the presentation, but I can tell you that we're on track. That's an important effort for us and agencies, if that's part of your question, Commissioner. We wanted to have a lot of these records resubmitted to us before we start in earnest with the effort of them submitting certification information, and because we understand that we represent an administrative effort on agencies, small and big. So we're on track to do that, and we'll be speaking in more detail in a few minutes.
And my final question, thank you, sir, is when complaints are filed, are the recipients receiving a receipt and a follow-up on their complaints?
Yes, there's the complaints that come from the agencies. You mean the agencies submitting
In the
complaints?
public as well. In the public as well. That's why I get a lot of questions from the public.
Yeah, we have an automated process to acknowledge receipt of somebody submitting a complaint. There have been very few but important instances in which maybe somebody wants to upload a video, let's say, or a very, very large file, and maybe the submission fails. So we've but we respond to those questions as we get them, Commissioner. But yes, there's immediate acknowledgement of receipt of the complaint.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments on this particular issue from the commissioners? I think I see Enrique. Anybody else? What were you hoping to have from the commissioners today in terms of this policy question?
Well, either a consensus or no objection to perhaps the point that Commissioner Bluestone made about perhaps waiting until we have some level of validation closer to a 95%, if that's where the Commission would like, or whether there was an appetite to have some of these records released sooner rather than later. Again, we are very careful with these records. They are a matter, as I explained in the memo, of great public interest. We get a number of public records requests on these matters. How do other commissioners perhaps feel about the approach that Commissioner Bluestone seems to be suggesting?
Commissioner Kazarosian, please, I think has a response.
Thank you. As I understand it, the way you presented this, 3,000 or so of the 4,000 are validated. It's only 1,000 that are not validated. And I think that, one of the objectives for the Post Commission is transparency. I don't see any reason for not going forward on the 3,000 that are validated. I certainly see the concern about the 1,000 that need more information, but I would support going forward with the validated sustained complaints.
Perhaps I could just ask for a comment again on what appear now to be at least two options presented by commissioners. Anybody? Yes, Commissioner Wynn, please. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm torn on this because I'm mindful of the fact that if we go forward with the 3,000, we can create a disparity or inequity, as Commissioner Bluestone said, but it's actually a disparity against the departments that are in compliance. Those departments that made the deadline and got their stuff in is going to have their data published, and those departments that didn't comply are going to have an extra layer of protection. I think we need to wait until we've got a more firm. I don't know that it has to be 95%, but 75% isn't statistically valid. We've got to get tighter.
Other comments? Is there, let me then ask whether there is, I hesitate to ask for a motion, but I think we now have certainly two alternatives. One is to simply wait, the other is to not wait, right? Just graphically speaking. So I think with that, maybe I can just, yes, Enrique, go ahead, please.
Let me suggest, if this would be acceptable to the commission, that we could continue the validation effort that I described in earnest, the 3 or 4 weeks that I mentioned, the 5 to, perhaps the half of records that we believe could be validated in short order, and report back to the commission in the next scheduled meeting, at the next meeting, if we have significantly different numbers between now and then. That could be a very different discussion or decision point.
Enrique, is there any commissioner who objects to that approach? If so, just raise your hand, please. And I don't think I see any commissioner objecting to that approach. So therefore, that's the approach that we'll utilize on this policy question. Thank you, Enrique.
Okay, let me move on back to my presentation. I will, Owen or Jamie, please let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep, perfect.
Okay, so that leads me to the certification update that I was just briefly summarizing for Commissioner Ellison a minute ago. We are on track to soon release a new portal where agencies will be able to submit all kinds of information to post, notably certification information and also standards information. In other words, complaints. And this is key, but we're going to have to stage those two releases. In a couple of slides, in a couple of minutes, I'm going to turn it over to our CTO, Owen Mael, who's going to be talking about the new portal, the permanent solution that I've reported to the Commission in the past, which is the platform that will be allowing us to interface with agencies and for them to submit both certification and complaint information. The first interaction with this new portal, as I mentioned it here, is this recertification of officers I through P. We'll accept, as I mentioned, complaint and disciplinary information, but that's going to happen soon after this effort of recertification is well underway or perhaps over. We will also use this portal later for the certification of new graduates. This is an effort that is currently being facilitated by the NPTC. When they sign up to the new academies, we'll eventually have this functionality in our portal as well, which is something that we have been planning for and building for. So we're scheduled to open this up to agencies on May 22nd. In roughly, the numbers this time around are about 7,700 individuals. We already know the majority of those individuals. They're already within our records, which is an important difference and a key improvement from last year. We will not be requesting, for example, rosters of individuals to make sure that they're at least conditionally certified when agencies are submitting information to us. Now we have a much better sense of who those are. Of course, agencies still need to check that we have all the individuals that need to be submitted for recertification, in case we are missing somebody or for whatever reason we don't have them in our records. We have approximately 2,200 individuals come from the top 8 agencies. These agencies will be offered a data migration option. In other words, the ability to enter information into a template and then upload it. However, we we want to emphasize that interacting with this tool, with this portal, is frankly the way that we will continue going forward. So it's important for agencies to get comfortable with logging in and interfacing with the tool, because there will be other information that they will submit to us via this portal. We have about 800 authorized users, and that process is ongoing. Owen will get into those details in a couple of minutes. We are also working very closely, as we have always from the work closely with the MPTC to make sure that the review process for compliance with the training requirements is done in real time. As I mentioned before, we want to make sure that we don't have to have correction letters like we had to do in the past, and we expect that notification letters will be released around August 1st. So submission, the portal starts on May 22nd. From then until June 30th, agencies will have the ability to submit information to us, and through the month of July, we'll have our review and decisions made by August 1st, or at least that's the planned timeline. The recertification documentation is also available now on Post website. That section has been updated. Once again, there will later be a complaint information or complaint section as part of this portal, but we will wait until at least after June to get agencies to submit this information via the portal. The complaint information will also be eventually available and viewable when it comes to disciplinary records as part of this portal. And again, we're very excited that we're deploying this functionality that will greatly improve our ability to report, both obtain information from agencies and the public, and report information out to the public as is intended. Let me turn it over to Owen for a better description of the portal.
Yes, good morning, commissioners. Let me talk about a couple of more points. If you can page down the slide. So the internal user acceptance is complete. We've done that not only with our people here at Post, but as of yesterday, we also opened it up to 6 agencies to watch us review the system, put through a couple of test officers that went very well. And 4 of them have actually expressed interest in getting into the portal next week a little early, again, to help us with real data. This will be real officers, real data, pushing it through into the system. It also allows our certification team to go through the process and make sure that we have any of the last minute bugs ironed out before we go live on May 22nd. We do expect, and we do have resources already set up for handling changes or fixes or bugs that come up between May 22nd and the end of June. So we'll try to get those done as soon as we see them. About 50% of the agencies, well, 100% of the agencies have been notified to request portal access. About 50% of those agencies have responded, and that's yielded about 800 authorized agencies. We allocated licenses based on the size of the agencies, starting with 2 licenses for agencies under a certain number, about 100 people, and then 3 licenses for the 100 to 200, and 4 licenses and 5 licenses going up if you were over 300 officers. A few agencies have reached out and requesting another license. That's fine. We have we interpreted, or we expected that. So as of this point, we'll have about 1,000 licenses available for portal users. We expect to start our training next Tuesday on May 16th. We'll currently run it Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, Tuesday and Thursday mornings, and then Wednesday afternoon, so we can try to get a good cross-section of agencies. This will be show and tell of the portal and what you can expect and what you can do. We'll also have members of the certification team in this office hours approach. So if you have questions about policy before you go into the portal, or you have questions about policy once you've potentially done 1 or 2 people, there'll be someone there available to help you. We also have a website set up, I'm sorry, an email address set up. So if they do have specific questions, they can send us an email and we can put a ticket in and we can get back to them as fast as possible. That will also include on the website the ability to obtain credentials. So if someone didn't get an email about asking for an authorized user, we will certainly keep that open throughout the year. Again, people come and go in agencies. Also, once we get complaints open and they want to download certification letters or see other information on their roster, they'll want people to have access to the portal. Help files and videos will be released by the end of May, and we'll redirect people to those both on a secure YouTube channel, and the help documents are within the portal. So once they log in, they'll have access to 12 different documents to help them through the process. When they do log into the portal, we've tried to make it as streamlined as possible. We've, a couple of big buttons across the bottom. They can view their roster, they can see their submissions or start their submissions for recertification, and then check up and see the process as it's ongoing, as well as submit complaints. So it should be pretty easy to just come in and click on the submit recertification button. That button will show just the I to Ps. So the agency roster will show their entire roster. Everyone A to H who's already certified will have their letters there. And then the recertification would be I through P. So that's the second button. You can go to the next slide. As I just mentioned, the portal is really designed to streamline data collection. We've tried to get rid of a lot of the information on the recertification process that's not necessary. Authorized users can go through this process and they can select 1 or 10 or up to 200 officers at a time. So it's very easy to go through the process. It's really 3 separate screens. The one piece here that we stressed during training, and it's in red in the middle of the slide, that the next slide that you go to is questions. So here, if you choose 1 person, then that questionnaire of 13 questions applies to that 1 person. If you select 10 people, then it applies to 10 people. If you select 100 people, then it selects 100 people. So what we'll be asking and training the authorized users to do is try to bucketize the number of people that have the same answers. For example, if they had a 20-person agency, 15 of them may be ready to be certified. All the questions we'll show you in a moment on the next screen will be yes, yes, no, no, yes, no. So they select the 15 people, they answer the questions, they hit submit, they're done. They have just recertified 15 of their 20 people. The next 2 people, maybe they don't have CPR training completed at this point. So they can take those 2 people, select them from this page, go to the next screen, answer the 13 questions, yes, yes, no, get to CPR, answer no, hit submit. They've now done their last 2 questions, or their last 2 people. Now there's 17 people. And then the last 3, they may be individual. This one hasn't done firearms. This one hasn't done in-service training. Someone else may be waiting on their 2,400 hours, or they won't be of age until after July 1st. So those 3 people they would do individually. So they also, from this screen, they can update any information that we're missing. This year, we're going to be sending the certification letters out to the officers directly. So we're asking the agencies to supply us with the missing email addresses. We don't have many email addresses in the system, neither does the MPTC. That's where our data really starts from. So we're asking agencies to fill in that information, as well as missing birth dates. They can send us an email and their current employment status. Maybe they're out on leave, maybe they're just back from leave. So we'll really be building our database now through this portal. So again, 1, 2, or 3 people on this screen. You could move to the next screen. And here's a sample of what the questionnaire will look like. It's 13 questions. These questions are on our website. So if they want to be prepared to download the quick help text from the website and get some specific information, the little I's here, informational squares, also give you help context as you're filling this out. Again, a little reminder at the top, if you selected one person on the screen prior, then these 13 questions will apply to that one person. If you chose 30 people on the screen before, then this one questionnaire will apply to 30 people. So we did describe this yesterday in our training, and it was received very well. People understood it, and they were happy that they didn't have to go through individually selecting more, one person at a time, that they could do it in bulk. And so again, 13 questions, trying to keep them clear. I think there was 16 last year, so they've been redefined. And again, that's all available on the website today, the specific questions and answers. On the next, and did you screenshot one more screenshot, or no? That was.
That's all that there seems to be, Owen.
Okay, so we can open it up for questions.
Commissioner Bluestone?
I just want to say great job. That's a great design. Really, really nice. I love it.
I suspect that Commissioner Bluestone's comment is shared by the other commissioners. Commissioner Wynn, please.
Sorry, I'd just like to thank the IT team for taking into consideration that large agencies would not be able to do that individually. So being able to batch enter officers who are eligible for recertification is a great help. Thank you.
Again, I think the consensus, we're all smiling, Owen, and you have a sense of how grateful and appreciative we are for the work that you've done and the explanation that you've given us here. Thank you.
Great.
Let me continue sharing my screen. If there's no further comments or questions, Madam Chair, to turn it to Eric Rebello-Pradas, which is the next part of the ED report, a little finance update. Eric, take it away.
Great. Thank you very much, Enrique. Good morning, everyone. Hope all is well. If we can advance to the next slide, just have a very short financial update from the division here. So FY24, we'll start with that, the forthcoming fiscal year. That's the one that the legislature is currently debating. So as everyone knows, last week of April, the House had wrapped up its debate. We maintained the $8.5 million in the final House budget that was engrossed, and which is the number that we know that we can comfortably live within. It's not the request that we had, but we made some adjustments that we are definitely able to live within the 8.5 million, and we know that we can still achieve all of our goals with that particular figure. The Senate Ways and Means released its budget on Tuesday, and I'm very, very happy to report that the number is the same. It's 8.5 million. Now, what does that mean? That means that if this holds throughout the Senate process and the final Senate engrossed budget ends up being 8.5 million, then the number for post or their agency budget would be non-conferenceable, which means it can't be changed. We'd already know way ahead of time before the conference committee meets what our number will most likely be when the governor signs off on the budget at the end. Of course, this is notwithstanding any potential vetoes. Of course, the legislature could change something. There's no rule or law that prevents them from doing that, even if something is non-conferenceable. But nevertheless, I would say we have a 95% chance that if that 8.5 million holds in the Senate, then that's probably the number we'll be going with for FY24. Senate debate will begin not next week, but the week after. They usually try to wrap things up right before Memorial Day weekend. Thank you. All right, now back to the current fiscal year, FY23. Right now, we are very closely tracking reversions, the amount of money that may go unspent for this fiscal year. Since the very beginning, or I should say probably about the 3 or 4 months into the fiscal year, we were trending about $500,000 to $600,000 that we knew we weren't going to be able to spend most likely for a number of reasons. That number is now about $850,000, which is what we reported last month. So we're still holding very steady at that particular number. Now, There are a number of items that we would be able to use this funding for. Most of them are related to IT. So we are working very closely with Slalom and Smartronics to try and see how much more work we would possibly be able to advance from FY24 into FY23 and get the work done now. So more to come on that, but we are keeping a very close eye on that. We did in April lower our forecast for payroll. There was some considerable savings there, obviously with delayed hires and so forth and attrition. And then of course, not as much equipment, office lease space we cut back on as well because we weren't moving into the new space 84 State Street as soon as we thought we would. And then of course, lower consulting costs as well. Just a really quick update on Salesforce development through Smartronics and Slalom. So phases 1 and 2 came in about $100,000 under budget. So we are trending very, very well in terms of cost for the Salesforce development piece. So to date, we've spent about 1.4 million out of the total, which will be about 2.5 million for the entire development cost. So we're more than halfway there. Of course, billing for, large expenses such as this, sometimes it does take longer than necessary. So as long as all the work gets done by June 30th, we're safe, and we'll have the accounts payable period post-June to reconcile any remaining bills. But I do predict that we will reach the 2.5 million by the end of the fiscal year. Next slide, please. In terms of hiring status, we are at 30 headcount, 30 employees right now. So we are definitely getting to the ultimate goal, which we have refined over the past few months. Right now, we're still thinking that we're going to forecast about 33 to 35 employees by the end of June, by June 30th. So right now we're at 30, and we're definitely on par to get to at least 33. We have onboarded 3 new hearing officers now that we're having these hearings for officers and of course for police officers and law enforcement agencies. We're going to be obviously we need presiders to look over these hearings and so forth. So we have been onboarding some retired judges to help us with this effort. So these will be part-time positions. So we have 3 that we have just onboarded, formerly Associate Justice of the SJC, the Honorable Judith Cowan. And then, of course, we have 2 former Associate Justices of the Superior Court, the Honorable Kenneth Fishman and the Honorable Charles Healy. So, and there's still more to come on that. And as we get more hearings and more get scheduled, we will most likely be onboarding more part-time hearing officers. We also just brought on our very first intake coordinator for the Division of Police Standards. So welcome to Laura Martin, who started about a week and a half ago. We currently have 3 open positions. We are still have a position for Enforcement Counsel. This would be our 3rd one for the Division of Police Standards. We still have an opening for Compliance Agent. This would be number 4 for the current fiscal year. And then we are we currently have posted Budget and Financial Operations Manager, which, as many of you know, is Allie, who works with me in finance and administration, and she will be moving on. I'm pleased to report that we do have a verbal accepted offer as of yesterday for a candidate. So we are moving forward on that position as well. And I believe that was the last slide. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions? Yes, Commissioner Ellison, please.
No, I just wanted to thank Eric for all the hard work and his cooperation in working with me and including me in this process as the treasurer for the commission, him and Enrique. I just wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Likewise.
And I don't think I see anybody else with any questions. Eric, let me thank you as well. And I think with that, we can move on to the next item on the agenda, the legal update from our General Counsel, Ravitz, please.
Thank you very much. I having a little trouble screen sharing, but let me
Can you, is screen sharing enabled?
I don't know why. As some people know, I was able to share it during the practice
Yeah,
session.
practice session.
Now it's
Is there something?
seems to be working.
Try it now, Randy. I closed the previous window where I was screen sharing.
No.
There you go.
What are you seeing now?
We see your screen, which is us.
All right.
So go to a tab.
Does that, what are you seeing now?
We see your screen, but
you're not seeing PowerPoint? No.
No.
You have two screens. We're seeing the wrong screen. If
what are you seeing now?
Just a
something's
second.
coming. Oh.
All right. I don't know if there's
do you have the presentation somewhere in the shared drive, or do you want to send it to somebody like me or Jamie?
Yeah, that's fine.
Just to see. There was an update on Zoom, and this explains some of the difficulties that I was having, and now Randy seems to be having.
All right. I don't know if Executive Director, if you've received that.
You sent an email to me?
Yes.
Give me a second. I got it. All right. Let me try it. Can you see it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Is it now on presentation mode?
It is now. Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, go for it.
This presentation covers really two large related areas. So one is the maintenance and reporting of records and information by law enforcement agencies. And the other is the Commission's auditing of those records and that information. Next slide, please. So I'll actually start with the second of those areas and work backwards. What are the Commission's powers and duties regarding the auditing of agency records? Well, there are a number of statutory provisions within the Commission's governing statute, Chapter 6E of the General Laws, that have a bearing on this subject. Within Section 3A, we see a general grant of powers to the Commission. And then underneath that is the power to conduct audits and investigations pursuant to Section 8 of the statute, which I'll talk about in a moment. And then also a general grant of authority to audit and inspect papers and books of records of law enforcement agencies, as well as a general unrestricted grant of the power to promulgate regulations related to the Commission's work under Chapter 6E. And so what you see is that while this one provision grants authority to conduct audits and investigations pursuant to Section 8 specifically. There are surrounding provisions that grant authority more broadly. Next slide, please. So now looking at Section 8, provides that the Division of Police Standards can audit records of law enforcement agencies, and really the focus of that language is on complaints and investigations and investigative reports related to misconduct or unprofessionalism, and that can include personnel records. And Section 8 specifically charges the Commission with promulgating rules and regulations, establishing an audit procedure. But at the same time, it provides that they shall not limit the ability of the Division of Police Standards to initiate an audit at any time and for any reason. And so there too, like in Section 3, what we see is a specific identification of the type of audit that the Division of Police Standards is authorized to conduct, but then an allowance for the division to engage in broader auditing activities. There's really no restriction on the ability to audit agency records. Next slide. So now that the statute has instructed the Commission to promulgate regulations in this area, what might be the Commission's objectives in developing auditing regulations? What might they look like? Well, one objective, especially taking into account the provision stating that the division shall not be restricted in its auditing abilities. One objective would be expressly authorizing the division to undertake particular types of auditing activity, leaving no doubt about what it can do. Another is allowing flexibility. So being structured in such a way consistent with the language of Section 3A and Section 8D and the newness of all this that would enable the division to inspect records without its hands being tied. And in particular, confirming that it can audit records beyond those listed in Section 8D. Another objective would be providing guidance to Commission auditors as to best practices, basically providing a blueprint or a checklist for what an audit might entail. Next slide. Another objective is to inform agencies of what they should be maintaining, what they should be reporting, and what they can expect in an audit, and also requiring certain forms of cooperation from them. And yet another objective of these regulations could be providing a vehicle and a structure for the Commission to achieve other goals. One is ensuring that agencies are keeping and reporting certain types of information. Another is standardizing, that they're standardizing certain practices regarding records and information, even just the use of technology and how things are recorded and reported to us. And ensuring that they examine, or ensuring that the Commission is able to examine not only the record keeping and reporting by agencies, but also examining the nature of their policies, the extent to which they're complying with various requirements, whether they are their own policies or policies of the Commission or other laws, and how they handle matters. So in other words, not just looking at the quality of the record keeping, but looking at the quality and the nature of the agency's functioning as shown through the records. And establishing action plans for agencies and follow-up examinations. So in other words, concluding an audit with some recommendations which would be developed in collaboration and discussion with the agency for what they could do next, and then providing a schedule for following up to see if that's been done. Next slide. So I just wanted to pick up on one of those last objectives, because really these regulations would provide a vehicle for the commission to achieve another goal, which is to ensure that agencies, law enforcement agencies, are taking certain steps with respect to record keeping and reporting. And that would be largely based on things we're already observing for how agency operations and our interactions with them can be improved if we know that we can count on certain record keeping being done and certain reporting being done. So what are the things that we might require? Well, requiring them to maintain records related to various areas, basic employment information, particularly the types of things that we're supposed to be including in our databases, certification, complaints and discipline, uses of force, the types of things that are highlighted in Chapter 6E, as well as internal policies, Brady lists and notices, documents related to accreditation, and documents related to other proceedings that the agency is involved in or that its officers are involved in. So prosecutions, such as in particular prosecutions against officers, civil litigation involving them, arbitration proceedings and civil service proceedings and collective bargaining, just requiring the agency to preserve those documents. And then giving the commission the ability to enforce that because it would be included in their regulations. Also ensuring that agencies maintain accurate records and that they correct errors. Again, by putting that in the regulations, that would allow the commission to ensure that that's being done. Next slide. Another thing that could be required in these regulations is designating, requiring agencies to designate a liaison to the commission, somebody that we would communicate with about any commission business, requiring them to transmit information to the commission that we are expected to maintain, requiring them to provide email addresses and contact names for us to utilize so that we have no difficulty in ensuring that documents are sent and received, requiring them to notify us regarding matters such as events and criminal actions against officers and activity in other proceedings, whether it's a decision, an order, or placement of an officer on the NDI, making sure they notify us, making sure that they update the commission regarding matters such as changes in officer status. Is the officer who's on leave now, has that person now returned from leave? Has the officer complied with any conditions of certification or suspension or retraining? Have there been any new developments related to action that the commission is pursuing? And then looking for other steps that could be required of agencies that would enhance the effectiveness of other commission regulations. So looking at things that we've already promulgated and saying, how could they be made even more effective if we were to require, for example, certain reports on uses of force to be sent to us as in addition to being sent to agency officials. That's just an example. Next slide. So what are some of the substantive areas that the commission could focusing on as it develops guidelines for agencies in terms of their record keeping and reporting and for commission auditors? Well, those are the areas that we see featured most prominently in Chapter 6E, certification related matters, uses of force, injuries and deaths, misconduct and discipline, including some of the things that are, again, most prominent in Chapter 6E, criminal and other legal actions, bias motivated conduct, integrity issues and violations. Next slide. Another area that we see in Chapter 6E is service of school resource officers and their references to juvenile matters, both in Chapter 6E and in the larger session law that created the commission, in-service training, the extent to which agencies are tolerant of officers intervening when they're supposed to be intervening, reporting things when they're supposed to be reporting them, and not facing any retaliation, to the extent that that can be gleaned from records. Again, events in other proceedings like outside litigation or civil service matters, and any patterns that particularly those that the statute directs us to look for: racial profiling, unprofessionalism. Next slide. So those are all things that could be highlighted in both parts of the regulations, what agencies are directed to do and what the Division of Standards is authorized to do. And who and what might we consult in this process? Well, personnel from different parts of our own agency to see what would make their work easier. Massachusetts law enforcement officials, so reaching out to agencies to get their perspectives. Other Massachusetts offices that audit or investigate government agencies. Generally accepted government auditing standards, which are referenced in a couple sections of the general laws and at least one regulation, and have been fleshed out by the federal government. Next slide. Other sources that we can and are consulting are secondary sources related to this specific area, auditing of government agencies, in particular law enforcement agencies, as well as the people who wrote those secondary sources, national organizations and any materials they might have. Looking at the records we've obtained from agencies, like the disciplinary records that the executive director was talking about earlier, and seeing what that tells us about how agency record keeping and reporting can be improved, and how things that we might do differently or might look for ourselves. And with all of this, any thoughts that people have from inside or outside the commission are invited, and they should reach out so that we can take those into account as we develop some drafts in this area. Thank you. Sorry for the technical issues. If there are any questions that the chair would like me to entertain, I can do so.
Let me start by thanking you for the very thorough analysis that you've just given us. And I think Commissioner Ellison does have a question or a comment, please.
Yes, again, thank you, Randy. One, you and I have to catch up on the school resource officers. That seems to still be a problem in Boston, particularly, and probably throughout the Commonwealth, to discuss that in depth a little more. But if for my fellow commissioners as well as the general public, can you explain to them what the Brady list is? Because I think a lot of people don't understand what that language is.
Right. Well, the idea of a Brady list is that it's a list of officers who, for one reason or another, are officers that where prosecutors should call attention to the fact that that officers have something in their background that might create issues about their credibility, and they should call attention to that in making disclosures to defense attorneys, so that defense attorneys can evaluate that information and may well perceive it as being exculpatory, as something that gives them the ability to impeach an officer on the stand or impeach the evidence. And when it comes to Brady lists, there's been a lot of discussion about that, but what there doesn't seem to be is a lot of agreement about exactly what those lists should look like, what should cause an individual to be placed on such a list, and how they should be maintained and who should maintain them. So it's an area of continuing discussion. But one idea that was generated about these regulations is that if an agency does have any materials in that area, that we require them to maintain them. And then we could see from there if there's something more that the commission would want to be done with those materials.
And my final question, I just have one last question, if you don't mind. On the audit, is there a timeline on when these should be done, or is this just based on the commissioners seeing an issue with an agency?
Right. There's no timeline in the statute for either promulgating the regulations or conducting audits. So there's this requirement about promulgating rules and regulations in this area, but as I said, the rest of it is largely left open-ended.
Thank you.
And
Thank you for your work.
I rather rudely interrupted you, Commissioner
No,
Ellison.
no.
I did want to just comment on the Brady List situation, that I would have some concern about the commission getting involved in this issue. The district attorneys are currently addressing in varying ways this question, and I think the courts are as well. I think we would certainly have to be cognizant of what is going on. I apologize. Sorry for the interference. So just expressing some misgivings on that point. Commissioner Bluestone, please.
Yes, thanks. I just want to say that was an excellent overview. And I think in general, I'm a fan of auditing. Most professional groups have some kind of auditing process of records. So I think that this is important. I would just sort of tip my hand a little bit, though, as a psychologist, and sort of suggest that auditing is also really helpful in terms of highlighting progress and identifying areas of success with goals and objectives that we're working towards. So I'm wondering if you might consider just adding something that shows that it also has a positive benefit.
Yes, thank you. Definitely. And auditing is also intended to be collaborative, so that there's supposed to be close communication between the auditor and the auditee about the objectives, about how they can be achieved, about how the audit can be conducted in a way that's not disruptive to the agency. So it is supposed to be forward-looking and productive, as opposed to punitive.
Are there any other comments or questions? I don't think I see anybody else indicating the same. Thank you, Randy, please, for your very thorough work here in presenting that information to us at this point. And I think now we have basically addressed the matters that were on the agenda. There are not any matters that were not anticipated by me as chair at the time of posting, and therefore, members of the commission, we will move into executive session in accordance with Chapter 38 of the general laws, certain provisions of the general laws, in anticipation of discussion in that executive session regarding the investigation of charges of criminal misconduct. Also under Chapter 38, combined with our governing statute, to the extent they may be applicable, other statutes in anticipation of discussion regarding the initiation of preliminary inquiries and initial staff review relating to the same, and regarding certain criminal offender record information, and under Chapter 38, Section 21A7, in anticipation of discussion and approval of the minutes of prior executive sessions. So I think with that, I would entertain a motion with regard to this meeting, motion to adjourn it. To members of the public, we will not be reconvening after the executive session. Members of the public, thank you very much for your attendance at the meeting and your interest in post. All staff members who have worked on any of the matters that have been addressed today, the commission appreciates and thanks you for your efforts. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Bluestone,
Yes.
Commissioner Calderon,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherry,
Yes.
Commissioner Ellison,
Yes.
Mr. Kazarosian,
Yes.
Mr. Luma,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
and Commissioner Wynn.
Yes.
I also approve. It's unanimously approved. Commissioners, we will reconvene into the executive session. Enrique and Jamie, in approximately 10 minutes, is it?
Correct. That works.
Thank you.